They'll range in value from maybe 60 or 70% tariffs to 10 and 20% tariffs. We've done the final form, and it's basically going to explain what the countries are going to be paying in tariffs.
Every vehicle entering the country is now facing a tariff close to 25%. That number alone tells a story. But behind it is something much bigger, a growing tension, a shift in tone, and a moment where global trade and domestic economics collide in real time. As new tariff plans are prepared behind closed doors, the U.S. administration is signaling that letters will soon go out to trading partners around the world. These are not just courtesy notes or policy outlines. They are direct notifications, outlining tariff rates that could range anywhere from 10 to 70%. And they are coming fast.
Trump is now saying instead of trying for complicated deals, he is going to simply send letters to countries and tell them what tariffs their goods will face.
The timeline is clear. The first batch may be delivered as early as tomorrow. By the 9th, the full list is expected to be in motion. This is not just about trade, it is about positioning. Every country that receives one of these letters will be faced with a decision. Accept the new terms or face higher barriers. Some will receive the minimum. Others could be looking at full-scale increases. And while these decisions are being framed as economic recalibrations, the effect will reach far beyond supply chains or spreadsheets. They will impact households, budgets, prices on everyday goods. YouTube isn't the biggest fan of content like this, but we believe people deserve to hear the truth. If you agree, hit that like button and subscribe. It helps us beat the algorithm and keep going. We really appreciate the support. This next phase of the U.S. trade strategy is being introduced as a financial adjustment, but it feels more like a shockwave. Tariffs as high as 70% will have real consequences.
On a major tariff deadline, the 90-day tariff grace period ends July 9th for most countries. That's this Wednesday. The deadline seemingly has some wiggle room, but if deals aren't locked in fast, some countries could see tariffs soar as high as 70%.
And it is not governments that pay tariffs, it is people. Shoppers, workers, business owners. The ripple effect is immediate. Whether it is electronics, car parts, or imported food, higher tariffs mean higher prices, and that cost travels directly to the end consumer. The plan, as explained by officials, is meant to address long-standing imbalances. Some countries have larger trade surpluses. Others benefit from older trade frameworks. The new approach aims to update that landscape. But when these changes are announced rapidly, without multilateral dialogue, it introduces volatility. And volatility is expensive. There is talk of balance, of proportional rates, of measured responses. But behind the carefully worded statements is a strategy that is, by design, disruptive. Markets do not respond to uncertainty with patience. They respond with caution. And caution in the business world often looks like hiring freezes, reduced spending, and delayed expansion. So while these letters may outline tariffs in tidy figures, 10% here, 70% there, the broader impact will be felt in far more complex ways. Importers will reassess suppliers, retailers will adjust inventory, and consumers will feel it at the checkout. Some officials have described the new tariffs as a bargain, that under older models, rates could have been even higher, that this approach is restrained. But even a restrained increase still represents billions of dollars in added trade costs. And again, those costs travel downstream. The language being used is not always easy to decode. Terms like reciprocal tariffs or baseline adjustments are technical, but the outcome is very tangible. Families paying more for products they used to afford, small businesses facing tighter margins, and supply chains already strained by global disruptions, now bracing for another wave of recalibration. This is where it gets more complicated, because while tariffs are framed as tools of negotiation, they also influence public sentiment. Trading partners are not just reading the numbers, they are watching the tone. They are noting how announcements are made, and how suddenly priorities can shift. Allies and partners begin to ask different questions, not just about economics, but about reliability, stability, predictability. When one day the message is 70% and the next day that number is walked back, the result is not relief, it is confusion. And in global trade, confusion often leads to hesitation. Manufacturers pause production, investors wait to commit, and governments reconsider long-term alignments. Even when tariff announcements are strategic, the short-term effect can be market turbulence. Stock indexes dip, currencies shift, interest rates come into question, trade routes face revision. And all of that uncertainty circles back to the average person, in jobs, in prices, in choices. This is the backdrop in which new tariff policies are being introduced. On one hand, an effort to rebalance trade. On the other, the reality of global interdependence. Because every action taken in one capital city is felt in boardrooms and households around the world. In the midst of this environment, countries like Canada are responding not with counter threats, but with preparation. There is a growing sense of economic coordination across provinces, industries, and ministries. And it is not just about defense. It is about resilience, a future built on reduced dependency, diversified partnerships, and new supply lines. Statements from Canadian leaders have emphasized unity, a renewed sense of national alignment. And while the diplomatic language remains measured, the shift is noticeable. A quiet repositioning. Less reaction, more recalibration. The goal is clear. Ensure that Canadian industries, exporters, and consumers are not left vulnerable to sudden shifts in global policy. That trade strategy is not shaped by surprise, but by structure. It is not just Canada. Across Europe, Asia, and Latin America, similar adjustments are underway. Countries are exploring new agreements, updating procurement rules, rethinking investment priorities. That perhaps is the most lasting impact of tariffs. Not just the immediate costs, but the long-term redirection they cause. Supply chains do not move quickly, but once they shift, they rarely return to where they were. In response to the tariff letters being sent out, some governments will seek negotiation, others will explore legal remedies, a few may announce reciprocal measures, but all will remember how the process unfolded, and they will make future decisions accordingly. This is why clarity matters. When policies are introduced with ambiguity, partners become cautious. When numbers fluctuate, 10% here, 70% there, it does not foster strength. It fosters retreat. In many ways, this moment reflects a broader debate about the role of trade in national policy. Should it be competitive, cooperative, conditional, and what role do alliances play when economic tools become political instruments? These are not new questions, but the way they are being asked in 2025 feels different. The volume is louder, the stakes are higher, and the margin for error is smaller. As letters go out, as policies take effect, the world watches how each country responds. Not just to protect its own economy, but to signal its position on the global stage. And in that spotlight, every move matters. This is a period of realignment, not just of tariffs, but of trust. Because in international trade, credibility is currency, and once it is lost, it is not easily regained. Nations are making choices. Some are doubling down on bilateral agreements. Others are investing in regional partnerships. A few are taking steps toward economic self-reliance. All of them are reading the same signals, and they are drawing their own conclusions. Back at home, the effects will take time to fully register, but they will, in product availability, in pricing, in business confidence, in hiring trends. For some sectors, it will mean new opportunities. For others, it will mean uncertainty. This is why policy needs clarity and implementation needs care. Because when the stakes are global, every action sets a precedent. Every policy creates a ripple. And so, as these next steps unfold, the most important question is not about the percentage, it is about the purpose. What are these tariffs meant to achieve? And how do we ensure that in trying to protect one economy, we do not destabilize many others? The weeks ahead will provide more answers. But for now, the global trade environment is entering a new phase, one defined less by agreements and more by adjustments. What matters most now is how leadership manages that shift, with precision, with patience, and with a clear eye on both immediate and long-term consequences. Because in a world this connected, policy cannot afford to operate in a vacuum. The signals sent today will shape decisions far beyond tomorrow.